Heroic has been all of the talk of the town. Heroic versus Astralis. It's been a long-standing rivalry. It's got really dirty and there's kind of like, corporate espionage and sabotage and reputational damage and a genuine distaste between the two orgs that's kind of fermented, if not fomented, down the years, and it's got to a really kind of like, nasty place. And obviously recently Astralis picked up another couple of heroic players in the form of Stown and Yabby, and this came in a weird set of circumstances that I talked about on another video and another stream. So just to refresh, what happened was Cadian got dropped unceremoniously from Heroic, which is like wild to think about because Cadian sort of is Mr. Heroic. He's the IGL that built team after team after team that was competitive on a budget. They won a pro league. He got them consistently into the top 5. They were the number 1 team in the world for stretches during his tenure, although I would add they were always a paper tiger in the sense I don't think they were ever truly the best team in the world. It's just HLTV rankings sort of does have its own inherent flaws like any mathematical ranking system would. You never felt about Heroic, oh, they're going to win the next tournament. You would think, oh, they're going to get to the semifinals and choke again. But still, the point is Heroic didn't spend money. They didn't have money. They spent huge, periods of 2022 and this year saying, fuck it, we're really hurting for cash. We need investment or we're going to have some problems. I think Cadian did great work for Heroic, and there was no sort of real reason to cut him other than the fact that Stown is their star player, and obviously Yabby is someone they brought in who's done very, very well. And it seemed to be there was an either-or situation manifesting itself, and the org did the wrong thing. If you've got a, 4-year, tenured, loyal IGL who's built you team after team, and you've got 2 decent players who are petulantly saying you've got to cut the loyal IGL or we're leaving, it's a no-brainer. You just get rid of those guys and you keep the IGL. But Heroic wanted to keep the star players, so they cut the IGL after trying to, as we'll get to, they did try to, have a negotiation and bring everyone together. It didn't work out. Then the players they tried to keep seemingly didn't want to stay there anymore, and they were like, actually, we'd like to go to Astralis, please. And so Heroic were in this weird spot where they had to bring back Cadian for 1 tournament only. They've lost Cadian. He's gone to Liquid now. By the way, he's gone to Liquid and he's going to win trophies at Liquid. He's in that Liquid team are going to win a fuck ton of shit in 2024. I actually can feel it. So put that out there with all of Richard Lewis's terrible takes that never come true ever. Put that out there. Take that to the bank. There was no going back for them with Cadian. He's gone. So they've lost the star players and the loyal IGL that's built them team after team. And now they're going international with pretty underwhelming signings, kind of. Not so much nerds, but, than the ones that have come afterwards. So it really massively mismanaged. But anyway, what happened at the time, because it was such a big story, and because it was Astralis Heroic and that rivalry manifesting itself again, everybody started talking about the rumors. Even I did it, right? You know me. I always make it clear if it's a rumor. I'm not like your average dog shit Twitter leaker, but I make it clear that this is like the word on the street. This isn't an official report you should sort of put any stock in, and I won't tweet it or write it up or put it on my Substack or make a YouTube video about it. I'll just say in passing, this is what people are saying behind the scenes. And people were saying behind the scenes, and I repeated it, that basically Stown and Yabby gave Heroic like an ultimatum, probably thinking they were going to get benched, and then they didn't, and then they were like, uh-oh, we'd really like to leave. Now, because of that, combined with the fact that they've now earned the nickname STABBI, right, as a collective, Stown and Yabby have become STABBI, an abbreviation for backstabby, because of what they did to Cadian. They've been very upset about this. And so Stown and Yabby have had to listen to like me and listen to Maui Snake and Kassad and Thorin and all the other pundits. And also Cadian did an interview on his exit, from Heroic. And they got upset about it. Now, for me, sometimes, and this is just a lesson learned from an old man who gets fucking shit on by the esports community just endlessly all the time for reasons that aren't even real. Just giving up on it. The average esports fan is a moron. The average esports fan is mentally ill. The average esports fan is divorced from reality. And the average esports fan doesn't really care and will conveniently lean into which narrative fills their pathetic, empty fucking lives with 5 minutes of just, where the 5 minutes where the ADHD medication isn't working. That's pretty much what an esports fan is these days. And the scene is garbage because of it, because it's garbage in, garbage out, unfortunately. What do I mean by that? If you have to pander to that type of person, your product panders to that type of person, everything, it has this knock-on effect. Esports is not the industry I recognise where it was populated by sort of like young adults. It's now just populated by bored children, and it's worse for it. More of that sustained vitriolic hatred towards esports fans a little bit later in the stream. But anyway, so just as a little bit of advice, you can't win them over. You did the thing that they imagined. Of course you did. You did choke out the Dota player. You did bully the 39-year-old caster who wasn't doing his job. You did create multiple videos saying their favourite YouTuber is bad, when in fact it was the other way around. You cannot win. So what you have to do, unfortunately, instead of continually petitioning for yourself, you just have to accept that your fans are your fans, and they are deluded and biased in your favour, right? And the people who hate you want to hate you because there's just nothing you can do about it, and they're just pathetic fucking losers, and just let them get on with it. So what you don't do is you don't fucking put out a 2-page PR statement to say why we never really did the thing that you imagined and couldn't possibly know anyway. You don't do that because it's a waste of time, and now you're going to get memed on for fucking writing the fucking dog shit that you've written. You don't do that. But Stown did do that. And you can see he put in this tweet with the accompanying statement. With this statement, we, Stown and Yabby, want to address a number of rumours and accusations made in connection with our move from Heroic to Astralis. We've made it a joint statement, and we will therefore refer to ourselves in third person. Now, 2 things. First of all, don't actually do that, because you're already being called STABBI, as if you've merged, as if you were like fucking in the David Cronenberg remake of The Fly, and instead of Brundle Fly at the end, it's sort of Stabby Fly, right? So don't do that, because people are already taking the piss out of you for it, right? But then also, if you are going to commit to the third person, we are a hive mind thing, we are Stabby, right? If you are going to do that, don't fuck it up immediately in the statement, which he does. So, just interestingly enough, I did see a lot of people say, oh, Astralis PR strikes again, right? And it's like, I don't know. I don't think Astralis wanted them to do this. I actually take Astralis at face value. Astralis publicly said, we didn't want them to do this. We had nothing to do with this. This is something they felt they had to do, and obviously there are players and we support them. That was that weird Steen guy who fucking had that. All right, I'll tell everyone what a bad person you are, Yanko. And Yanko went, okay, go on then. And he went, well, yeah, I've got nothing actually, sorry. That guy, he said it wasn't an Astralis PR. So, I mean, listen, Astralis lie all the time. They've done nothing to earn your trust. But I actually believe him on this one, especially given how ridiculous the statement is. So, let's have a look at this statement then, eh? One thing I want you to just keep an eye out for, again, well, 2 things, really. 1, the number of contradictions, right, of which there are multiple ones. And 2, the number of denials for things that Heroic never accused them of, or no one really accused them of, right? It's kind of weird. But anyway, we did not initiate a push to replace Cadian, nor did we stand alone when these discussions were initiated on the team. So, what they're saying, even there, they say we didn't initiate a push to replace Cadian, but when the replacement of Cadian did happen, it was a team effort and we were involved in the team effort. So they put in this hyper-specific timeline, and I'm not going to read it all because it's super fucking boring, but You can see here, they say, on the 13th of September, Stown took contact to Heroic's management and Cadian solely to express his thoughts on a frustrating period involving key persons having left the organisation, more on that later, uncertainty about the future of the lineup and consecutive frustrating months on the server. Just as importantly, we were also unhappy with the dynamics regarding the leading of the team on and off the server. So Stown took contact. So not STABBI, not the hive mind. So not the third person. They've already fucked it up. And then they went back to third person in the next sentence. But what that says there is, quite clearly, unequivocally, and as we'll get to, I happen to know, yes, Stown did certainly instigate it. And he said, I'm happy to go on the bench, because he already had one eye on leaving, for reasons we'll get to. Or, you can cut Cadian and I'll maybe make a go of things. Then it goes, on the 14th, all the players in the roster were informed about the aforementioned conversation by Heroic management. It became clear that all 4 players and coaches in the roster, except Cadian, shared and vocally expressed they felt the same frustrations as Stown. And then on the 18th, they held a team meeting for all the players, coaches, and organizational reps. And at this meeting, everyone, not just Yabby and Stown, came to a common and final decision to part ways and stick together as a team with a new fifth. Now, we'll shelve that, but that's what they're saying. So basically, Stown was the first, and then everybody just miraculously woke up and agreed with him. Interesting. They say there was no prior knowledge of Astralis plans and no signed future plans. And they say when Heroic made their statement, saying Stown and Yabby agreed that if Heroic let Cadian go, they would extend their contracts. This is untrue. We did have early negotiations with Heroic management about renewing our contracts, but at no point did we commit or agree to sign new contracts. The statement also says they communicated having made future plans with Astralis, implying we had signed contracts with Astralis, and this is also untrue. No, that isn't implying you signed contracts. Future plans are, when our contracts expire, we'll come and we'll get you. See you. Keep it vocal. Don't write nothing down, because after the Hunden scandal, the release of the Hunden files done by yours truly, we're not too sure actually about, whether we could get in trouble again for this shit. And remember, my reporting led to Astralis parting ways with Casper Shit, the handball master, and Hunden, and getting fined $100,000 by ESL for clear conflict of interest. Now, look, that to me validates the reporting right then and there. If it wasn't accurate, why would Astralis have let the people go? Why would ESL have fined people? So guess that was another W, right? In a year that I was given Journalist of the Year. By the way, that story, so much work to do, so explosive, genuine scene-changing impact. Should have just won it for that. Didn't have to do the other 14 or 15 incredible stories I did. But, you've got to be sure, because you never know when the Kang Gang is going to strike and steal a fucking award from you. So, anyway, nobody accused them of signing early contracts. The denial is, again, designed to distract you. So, next, a new exciting project. On the 29th, we were contacted by Astralis. On the 30th, we told Heroic we wanted to go. And then, hilariously, moving on. We understand the disappointment from Heroic's perspective and acknowledge the pressure our wishes caused on the organisation and the roster. We regret the unfortunate timing of events and the drama it's caused, but we did our very best to play with open cards. They absolutely did not, while still staying true to ourselves and what we believe is the best for our career. We never planned or conspired with anyone to push Cadian out. A lie, we're going to get to that, out of Heroic or to hurt Heroic, Cadian, or anyone else. Our project with Heroic simply fell apart, and we decided to follow our heart and pursue a new opportunity for our careers. Now, what they didn't know, or maybe what they did know, was I was thinking about what's going to be the last story I cover of 2023. What's the last article I'm going to do? And actually, I got a couple of irons in the fire, a couple of good ones that I'm going to hit before the first of 2024. But, I was like, listen, it might not be the most exciting story, but it's pretty interesting. Astralis and Heroic go back at it. I happen to hear a few things behind the scenes, because as everybody will know, it's no coincidence that pretty much ever since Astralis was formed, I've been the one able to call them out on the bullshit, been the one who found out like every little lie they've told and proven it. It's because I'm well connected in the Danish scene, as I've said many times. I've been to more Danish lands probably than UK lands. I used to go to all of the LAN events out there, and did it for years. I knew all the Danish gaming news journalists, and stuff like that. A lot of people from Denmark talk to me, and so I hear pretty much everything. And I was like, you know what? There is an interesting story here, and it's one that people have missed. So I went and I wrote it up, and this statement came out after I'd finished the article. And so, I had to rewrite the article, which delayed it. But here it is, behind the scenes of the latest Astralis roster move, which, by the way, because I'm such a nice guy, this is just available to everyone. I haven't put this behind a paywall like I do with the Substack podcasts and some of the other, how should we say, more specialist articles. There's an entire archive of, years of work on there that I'm constantly adding to as well. You can search for historical articles and that kind of thing. So anyway, quite funnily enough, the first 1,000 words of this 4,000 word piece is pretty much just looking at the history between the org in a move that was deemed by HLTV, and in fact, actually, I think the same person posted here. Look, check this out. A bit of a disappointing article by your standards. 90% of this piece I had already known from reports before. Even the transfer amount that your source added was already publicly known. It wasn't confirmed. HLTV had said, we heard. By the end of the piece, it felt like a bit of a waste of time with how little new information was in this piece. And then they also added, I understand, though, as it seems with the lack of articles, news must be drying up in esports this time of year. So Graham R. there, a fucking moron. Please unsubscribe from the Substack. If you're paying the money, stop. You're not my audience. But I was a bit more gracious about it in the comments there. But there's a ton of new information in this article, but the context is important. The part everyone was missing about this, and the reason that people sort of didn't understand the move, but then it becomes abundantly clear, is that Astralis had made a very important signing that wasn't related to the players, and it was this guy, Kasper Strauber Hansen. Now, Kasper is the guy who was the head of performance at Heroic. He was the guy that, funnily enough, if memory serves me correctly, when the Hunden thing happened and they got rid of him, I think he might have been the guy that stepped in, sort of attend as an impromptu coach. But generally, he's really well liked by everybody in Heroic. But of particular importance is his relationship to Stown. Now, without putting too fine a point on it, because I don't like to talk about other people's personal issues, but we know publicly that Stown lost a brother in tragic circumstances, and it hit him really hard, as it would do, losing a sibling in the manner he did. And then, of course, obviously as well, he had that sort of embarrassing thing in public where he was kind of in the center of a public CS love triangle. And, look, when you're a young adult, nothing really prepares you for the level of scrutiny and spotlight that you're in. And when you're dealing with people like mocking you, ridiculing you, talking about your personal life, plus you're grieving. And, I've got a lot of sympathy with that. It's hard to grieve in the public eye. Obviously, Stown had sort of had a few issues, and he ended up forming a bond with this guy. And you can see the quote there. He had a good bond with the players and organisation and was well connected with the team. But obviously, he was especially well bonded with Stown. He had gone through a lot in his personal life, meaning Stown, not just playing, and Kasper had really helped him with his mental health. I'm almost 100% sure once Kasper left, Stown was always going to try and follow him, and that's when all the shit started. So you have to understand that Astralis basically signed this guy, who is this highly rated head of performance, somebody who Astralis would look to hire anyway, because they needed a replacement for Kasper Shit, who's no longer with the organisation. And so they brought him in, and Stown was really upset about it, because obviously Stown lost kind of like his emotional anchor at the organisation, somebody he had a good bond with. He went to the management, he had a blow up with them about why didn't you do more to keep him. And that's when they started to initiate the move. Now, one of the things I left out of the reporting, and I interviewed, like about half a dozen people to put all this together. One of the other things they left out is that, like, they admit in their little statement, oh yeah, it was Stown that sort of drove it. But the part that I didn't put in writing, but I'll say here, and you can word on the street it or metabolize however you want. The reality is that Stown and, like, Yabby came on board very quickly. It started with Stown, but Yabby was like, yeah, okay, let's get rid of Cadian. And then the other guys were kind of like, no, actually, let's mitigate this and let's work through it. Like, because ultimately, the general consensus from management and initially the other players and, coaches and all that was, if you criticize Cadian, he's got to have the opportunity to put it right. You've got to give him the chance to fix things. But in the end, they wouldn't budge. And while that was happening, they also were going out there going, oh, yeah, but, Cadian wants to replace you. And they were saying this to other players. Cadian wants to replace you. That's what I was told by very authoritative sources. So Cadian wants to replace you so you wouldn't be safe. And then, and they might be, management might be thinking about replacing the coach. So, I don't know. And so in the end, everybody ended up agreeing that just for their own self-preservation and for what would be better for the team overall, in terms of raw talent, let's go with Stown and Yabby. Now, at this point, whether or not the Astralis move was always in Stown's mind, I don't know. It doesn't seem it would be, because why go to the lengths of pushing Cadian out if you just want to leave? The easier thing to do would be to just say, I want to leave, I want to go to Astralis, I want to work with Casper again, and you probably get that wish. And I also want to add, and I don't think a lot of people were sympathetic, like, Stown went through a lot. He's a kid. He's gone through a lot of shit, and if he's found somebody he's close to and he wants to work with them, I don't think you should hate on him because of that. I don't at all. I think he might not have handled this in the best way, but for sure, I hope the community doesn't bash him too hard. Like, he's got his reasons. The explosive quote is this. Again, all the sources anonymous. For obvious reasons, particularly with the Danish mafia in esports, that is. That's in air quotes, by the way. Stown didn't want to play with Cadian anymore and was actively getting support from the others. Yabby didn't take much persuading, but at first, the others didn't agree and wanted everyone to work it out. The org did nearly 2 weeks of intense mediation, trying to solve the situation, arguing Cadian should have a chance to address their criticism and a chance to improve. Both of them made it clear that they refused to play with Cadian no matter what, and that Heroic must choose between them. While the org waited, Stown and Yabby started to lobby internally and turn the rest of the players against Cadian. In my opinion, they actively manipulated the rest of the team to ditch Cadian. The team then said to the org that they were all in agreement that Cadian had to go. The org didn't really want to cut Cadian, the source concluded, but at that point, what can they do? Stown had said he would do anything to make it work without Cadian, even promising to AWP and be the in-game leader if needed. So Cadian gets kicked, and then Stown and Yabby turn around and say, actually, we don't want to do these things anymore, we'd like to join Astralis. So Heroic got fucked, and so did the rest of the team. I doubt any of them would have pushed out Cadian if they knew Yabby and Stown weren't going to stay. So there you go, just another day in esports. And as I say in the article, by the way, that's like how most roster moves get done. Esports is really fucking stupid because the players have so much agency that you just can't really do anything about them. Like, star players get what they want all the time. They get overpaid, they get to play with the players they want, they get to dictate the roster, they get to dictate the coach. Even if they have a coach they like, the coach is like an extra life for an IGL or a star player or a lineup. They have to lose their job first before you ever think about making changes. And all the while this is going on, they're being massively overpaid relative to the value they generate for an organization. They don't do media work. It's like, for fuck's sake. This is why the industry is, well, one of the many reasons why the industry is broken. But anyway, yeah, they didn't even get to keep them. And then the other part was Astralis were kind of on high alert, waiting for it, because I'm guessing Stown and Casper were still talking, and they put in a bid saying, oh, we'll pay you $600,000 for the pair. But Heroic had basically said, no, we're gonna skin Astralis for this one. And again, the quote from the source was, internally, Heroic management had said they were going to charge Astralis an asshole tax for the players, and they came up with the amount being $2 million, about 40 million Danish kroner. The players actually ended up helping Heroic here because they refused to open a dialogue with any other organizations, and instead were talking about getting lawyers to review their contracts. But Heroic didn't budge, and in the end, Astralis paid the money. Heroic see this as a big win, especially for players improving in CS2. And so, apart from the revelation about the asshole tax and the initial 600,000 bid, remember, there's no new information in this article, according to Graham R. But the other funny thing was, there was multiple orgs that were like, yeah, we'd buy Stown, we'd buy Yabi. And I know who these orgs are, but again, it's irrelevant now, so I'm not going to say. But there was multiple organizations who were like going to take one player here, one player there. We're certainly not going to pay $2 million for the pair. And the players only wanted to go to Astralis, so Heroic got to charge the asshole tax because Astralis, Casper had highly recommended them, and that's kind of where we went with that one. Now, as the article says, this doesn't mean Astralis are the bad guys. This is just ruthless business in Denmark. It's how Astralis have always conducted themselves. And I gotta say, the more and more that I'm hearing about what's going on around Heroic, it's actually, you can't blame the players for leaving. You've had months of headlines about how they're struggling for money. Then they got bought by that Crow Bidco. And if you remember, in that other video where I was talking about like conflict of interest coming back to esports, the fundamental problem you've got here is Crow Bidco coming in and become this Norwegian company, right, who just so happened to be working with the Ulti agency, who just so happened to be the same agency that negotiated the Russian players going from Gambit to Cloud9 in a deal we still don't know the details of, at a time when you weren't meant to be doing business with Russian people because of sanctions and optics, and yet Cloud9 got to do it, and still nobody cares. Fair enough. But obviously, that Crow Bidco, the board members of Crow Bidco are in this tangled web from that article I showed you in that video, which was called Public Ties Between Heroic, 1xBet, and the Paradise Papers. And so the issue that's going on now behind the scenes is that people have concerns that Crow Bidco is essentially in cahoots or, is controlled by board members or, not the founders, but the controllers of 1xBet, and obviously this creates a huge knock-on effect of conflict of interest because 1xBet sponsor HLTV, 1xBet sponsor ESL, and if you're Heroic and you participate in an ESL, and ESL is sponsored by 1xBet and advertising 1xBet, you're not a million miles from BetBoom inviting Team BetBoom to BetBoom Dakar. So anyway, when I was working on this piece behind the scenes, and again, no new information here, just this one paragraph could have been a story, but Graham R knows best. Multiple sources have, I'll just read you the paragraph. Multiple sources have confirmed me in private that this new ownership has raised significant concerns with tournament operators, most notably ESL, who are not only investigating to find conflicts of interest, but have demanded Heroic provide documentation and be fully transparent with them. ESL have also recently added more robust conflict of interest rules into their rulebook. It's unlikely that anything incriminating is ever going to be found on paper, assuming there even is anything to find in the first place. That would kind of defeat the point. However, it's worth noting that Heroic's new ownership could find themselves sanctioned should anything untoward ever be proven, and multiple people are certainly looking. It's not established if the players were aware of this, but if they were, you'd be hard-pushed to blame them for wanting to leave. Certainly, there's enough awareness out there about this topic that several sources suggested it was a factor in Heroic missing out on some of their transfer targets for replacements to those who joined Astralis. And indeed, without naming names, I have been told, and again, with reasonable authority, that there were a number of players who might have moved to Heroic but didn't want to move to Heroic because everybody is chattering behind the scenes about this potential 1xBet conflict and what it might lead to. What you have to understand is that in 2025, given there's going to be no partnered leagues anyway and the Louvre agreement contract is going to end, although hilariously I am being told they're going to try and run back a version of WISA which is going to be Saudi controlled, and that's why they've been putting out the ESL puppets like, you know, Rijkaard into these other Saudi Arabian run esports federations. But anyway, we'll see where that ends up in 2024. The bottom line is there were a number of people who were like, yeah, you know, in 2024, because the partnered leagues aren't going to be there, people might just say, look, if you can't prove whether your ownership to us in a way we find satisfactory, we might just not have you at our tournament because we wouldn't be under any contractual obligation. So that was the kind of most important parts of the story. That ultimately, I think there's good reasons to maybe be a bit cautious about joining Heroic or playing in Heroic. And if you're a star player with a chance to go to Astralis, you know, it is the Danish team. They're the biggest org in Denmark, and it ain't even close. And just with that, where to end is probably, you know, the other aspect of it was, yeah, they do want to go to an international lineup, and the original plan was to bring in Ents and, you know, have a fully international roster, but Falcons, obviously, their super team didn't work out the way that they wanted it to, so they kind of swooped in and got Sun Pius and Madden, and so the only people that are going to be joining from Ents going to Heroic is going to be Saw, the coach, and Nerds. Obviously, not a great time for an Israeli to be playing on a Saudi Arabian team, even if that ever was the move. I don't think it would have been, because they've got to keep Boros. I mean, he's kind of like central to what they're trying to do over there. But anyway, so that's pretty much all of that. That is that story. So give that a read if you haven't already. Naturally, it went to Reddit, and people were just like, look, you know, this Richard guy is a good journalist, but let's post hundreds of comments about how we hate him. His journalism's good, but we hate him, and we want him to die, and we think he's a cunt. He's an irredeemable piece of shit. It was like, okay, well, nice one, guys. Merry Christmas.